Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk some boxing. I didn't get a chance to talk to you guys about some of the past fights that happened, and also some of the upcoming fights, how exciting it is. We're watching the build-up and so on to these fights. I want to talk about all of that and all the news that's happening also in boxing. But before I do that, we will praise you, O Lord, with all hearts. We will show forth all your marvelous works, and we will sing and rejoice in you. We'll sing praise to your name, O Most High. James DeGale versus Chris Eubank Jr. I saw the fight. I watched it. Honestly, people were saying that Chris Eubank Jr. beat James DeGale. The first, what was called the first knockdown, I didn't think was a knockdown. Yes, James DeGale got hurt, but I don't think the referee judged it correctly. As much as Chris Eubank Jr. was throwing a lot of punches, I noticed that he really wasn't catching James DeGale flush with a lot of punches. I thought James DeGale was pretty effective in throwing his punches to the body, especially the straight lefts to the body. And he would catch Chris Eubank Jr. and then fall in and clinch him because he realized he couldn't, Chris Eubank Jr. would just keep on throwing a barrage of punches. Having said that, and though I thought that James DeGale was the more effective boxer in that fight, I will say that Chris Eubank Jr. still performed quite well, had great stamina, was throwing a lot of flurries, he was the aggressor, even though he wasn't the effective aggressor. And so, even though I believe James DeGale actually beat Chris Eubank Jr. because it wasn't politically correct to give him the decision, I guess James DeGale lost that fight. But if you look at Chris Eubank Jr.'s face, he got beaten up and stuff. James DeGale also got some beaten up stuff on his face because he did get tagged by Chris Eubank Jr. But I still think in the end, James DeGale beat him. I know my opinion is not very popular, but that's what I saw when I watched that fight. Lee Selmy did beat Omar Douglas, and Joe Joyce did knock out Bermane Stiverne. Boy, did he get knocked out. But Joe Joyce doesn't look like a fighter that actually has a one-punch knockout power. It's the accumulation of punishment. Also, what was interesting that same day, Brandon Rios lost to Humberto Soto, and Anthony Jarrell won a decision over Avni Yildirim in the 10th round, the fight being stopped. I thought for a very, 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 very minute reason, Anthony Jarrell having a cut over his eye, very slight cut, but they stopped the fight anyway. It was a tough fight for Anthony Jarrell. He got left off the hook. He did box very well though. But Avni Yildirim was actually coming on as the fight progressed. So Anthony Jarrell got a sort of bailout there with that decision by the referee. Omar Figueroa actually beat John Molina Jr. It was a close fight. You could argue it either way. You could have given John Molina the decision, or you could have given Omar Figueroa. Both guys got caught with punches, and it was somewhat of a slugfest. Also, Rob Brandt beat Kazan Bayangurov, or Baysangurov. Okay? So those are some of the fights that passed, and definitely Robert Brandt did get the win there. Omar Figueroa, you could call it either way, I guess, or a draw. Anthony Jarrell got bailed out, even though he was boxing pretty well. Avni Yildirim was actually coming on. Brandon Rios lost to Humberto Soto. That is definitely true. Joe Joyce did knock out Bermane Stiverne. It was accumulation of punishment. Lee Selby definitely got a win over Omar Douglas. James DeGale lost to Chris Eubank Jr. It depends on what you're looking at. For me, I thought James DeGale was the guy that landed the cleaner, more effective punches, even though he wasn't landing in combinations. And he had to sort of box Chris Eubank Jr. because Chris Eubank Jr. is a very big, very strong super middleweight. So that's something that people do not understand. Upcoming fights. Luis Ortiz is going to be on Saturday the 2nd, facing Christian Hammer. Erislandy Lara that same time will also be facing Brian Carlos Castano. So I guess these are supposed to be showcase fights where they showcase Erislandy Lara and Luis Ortiz. Dimitri Bivol the following Saturday will be facing Joe Smith Jr. I guess this is the showcase again, Dimitri Bivol's expertise. And on that same day, Sean Porter will be facing Yordenis Ugas, who's a Cuban fighter, Cuban boxer. Maurice Hooker is also going to be facing Mikel Lespierre, and Katie Taylor on the following Friday will be facing Rose Volante. Tevin Farmer will also face Huno Carral, and then on the Saturday, Errol Spence Jr. is going to be facing Mikey Garcia. Somewhere down the line, on the 24th of March, Lamont Peterson will face Sergio Libanez. Now let me just talk a little bit about some of the ones that actually interest me. Of course, the one that most interests me is Errol Spence Jr. versus Mikey Garcia. That's the one that most interests me. The rest of the fights are fine, but that's the one that most interests everyone, and it's a pay-per-view fight. Again, I think a lot of people are underestimating Mikey Garcia. I'll give you guys a perspective here. So we've seen the interviews with both fighters. We've seen them sit down, we listen to them talk, etc. And the first thing you'll realize is that Mikey Garcia is getting well prepared for this fight with Errol Spence Jr. If you guys know Robert Garcia and his dad, they get the fighters ready. And just very recently, we saw Keith Thurman face Josecito Lopez, and Josecito looks strong as hell. In fact, he looks stronger than even Keith Thurman. And if that's just a foreshadowing of what's to come, then I expect Mikey Garcia to be in shape and to have that physical conditioning to face Errol Spence Jr. Not only that, but I also expect his boxing expertise to be taking up another gear. And just knowing what Robert Garcia and his father do in training Mikey, I strongly believe Mikey's going to be well prepared for Errol Spence Jr. This is not the first time Mikey Garcia has gone up in weight. This is the fifth time he's going to be going up in weight. Every time he's gone up in weight, he's been well prepared, well conditioned for the fight that he had to face. So I have no doubt in my mind Mikey Garcia is ready to face Errol Spence Jr. Here's the other thing. People are forgetting. Mikey Garcia, just one fight before his last fight there, was fighting at junior welterweight, okay, against Adrian Broner. So if people think that Mikey Garcia, is not going to be ready for Errol Spence Jr. and is not going to give Errol Spence Jr. a very, very, very difficult fight, just based on the history of Robert Garcia and his father training fighters, Errol Spence Jr. is in for a very, very long night. And I just don't see a lot of people talking about Errol Spence Jr. stopping Mikey Garcia. Is too big, etc. Listen, I don't care if he's big, if he was a middleweight. Mikey Garcia is going to be a lot to handle in that fight. Now, I'm not saying that Mikey Garcia is going to beat Errol Spence Jr., even though it's very possible he could do that, because that's his history, that's his track record. He's moved up in weight, faced some really big, strong guys, and he's beaten them, okay? He's even dropped them. So I don't question Mikey Garcia's power either. I think a lot of people are underestimating Mikey Garcia's power. I think Mikey Garcia hits harder than Errol Spence hits. And so I think a lot of things that people are talking about, Errol Spence is a technical fighter, he'll break you down, etc. But I don't think he's a heavier hitter than Mikey Garcia. I really seriously don't think so. So, and there was a punching test where you go to this machine and people punch the machine. Errol Spence punched the machine with his left hand, and Errol Spence punches less hard than guys such as, and this is a shocker, but guys such as Leo Santa Cruz actually punch harder than Errol Spence. Now that's not really, you see, a lot of times people look at weight class for punching power, and it's not necessarily true. you look at a guy like Gervonta Davis, for instance. Gervonta Davis punches harder than even Errol Spence. He literally punches harder than Errol Spence as a left-hander. And that's kind of amazing when you do test the punch resistance on a machine that, as much as we say that Gervonta Davis is a super featherweight, he punches harder than Errol Spence punches. And some guys punch harder than heavyweights. And I've heard this before, and I never really paid much attention to it because, people always think weight class and stuff. But your punching power is not just dependent on your weight class. And I think sometimes a lot of us believe that, but it's not necessarily true. And it's not based on your height. It's not based on your girth and all of that. It's based on just your technique and just what's naturally built into you, I guess. So I think that Errol Spence might be surprised if he's not prepared for Mikey Garcia, who can punch. And I do remember the great Roberto Duran. I remember Shane Mosley. All these guys could punch pretty hard, and they faced the very best. So if Errol Spence is the very best welterweight Mikey guy, I don't think he's the most experienced welterweight, though, in terms of the division and consistently fighting higher caliber competition. Nonetheless, they say he's the best welterweight out there. Then Mikey Garcia is going to shoot for him, and he's going to prepare for him, and then he's going to give him a fight. And I won't be surprised if he gives Errol Spence all he can handle for 12 rounds, because Errol Spence is, they say he's a technical fighter and all of that. But when I watched him against Kell Brook exposed a lot of stuff that, even Lamont Peterson exposed some stuff about Errol Spence. And Errol Spence did try to fight sometimes on the back foot around Lamont Peterson to bring Peterson to him. But I don't think that, I think there's a lot more subtleties to boxing. Peterson's he's an alright fighter, but he's no Danny Garcia. Okay? I think Danny Garcia gives Errol Spence all he can handle. By the way, I think Danny Garcia also hits harder than Errol Spence does when he was clocked in on the machine. So these are guys that actually punch harder than Errol Spence. Errol Spence just relentlessly goes to the body, and he has nice body work. But in terms of punching power, there are guys that punch harder than Errol Spence. So that's just an interesting thing I thought I would mention to you guys. Which is another fight that might interest me. Bivol versus Joe Smith Jr. I want to see how Dimitri Bivol will handle Joe Smith Jr. Joe Smith having lost to a number of different opponents, but having beaten the legendary Bernard Hopkins. I guess that's the notch under his belt for now. He also beat another very good light heavyweight. Forgot what his name is, the Polish guy. Anyway, this is what I have breakdown. The other bouts are more feature bouts. So Lamont Peterson versus Lipnitz should be interesting. Farmer versus Carroll. Taylor versus Volante. Hooker versus Lapierre. Porter versus Ugas. These are all more not really bouts that I necessarily want to see, but they're feature bouts. So you have Ortiz versus Hammer and Lara versus Castagna. So those are all bouts that are feature bouts. Anyhow, leave in the comment section what other fights you are looking forward to. Now, more in boxing news, we saw that Tyson Fury has now signed with Top Rank and with ESPN and is trying to sort of, dictate to Wilder or dictate to Anthony Joshua, because Anthony Joshua is going to be going up against Gerald Baby Miller, and that should be an interesting matchup. Gerald Baby Miller will present some problems to Anthony Joshua. We'll see how Anthony Joshua navigates around that to get the win if he can. Then we see Tyson Fury, as I said before, trying to have some leverage against for a rematch with Deontay Wilder, who's a free agent right now. So it should be interesting to see if Wilder and Fury can get that rematch. I think it's worth the while to get the rematch immediately. I do not know. Bob Arum's kind of in the mix. I don't know how much say Bob Arum will have on that, as I do think that Tyson Fury has his own company. He works with He works with the English promoter. I forgot what his name is. And so I guess in the U.S. he will look for promotion in the U.S. through Top Rank and ESPN. Should be interesting. In the interim, I also saw that we have this really highly anticipated fight between Danny Jacobs and Canelo Alvarez, and they had a little sit down and stuff. So that's very good. Again, Canelo has not dodged anyone. He's really fighting the hard fights. I saw that Oscar De La Hoya is talking about putting a gag order almost on Floyd Mayweather in terms of his fighter. He thinks that his fighter is going to be being swayed away by Floyd. Of course, that fighter has been in Floyd's gym a number of times sparring, so it's not really truly surprising to see him sort of associating himself with Floyd Mayweather. That does not mean that Floyd's trying to take him away from Oscar, but it is something where Oscar had to sometimes take steps and measures to make sure that their fighter, his future good fighter, would not be swayed across to some other promoter. So I guess that's the precaution Oscar's taking in regards to that. So this is what we've had. Gervonta Davis also having starched his opponent. We will see what kind of challenge will be presented to him in the future. But this is all I have right now for boxing news and boxing reports. Tune in next time to see what other videos I have. If you want to support my channel, please do so. You can do so through MoneyGram or Western Union donations. Alright, you guys have a great one.